Welcome to Living Life Juicy, the podcast where we explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things. You can find the Living Life Juicy podcast on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. If you're interested in video resources and insights on how people grow and groups develop, go to the Growing People podcast on YouTube and the blog. Along with other resources, we have created a whole bunch of explainer videos that are short videos that introduce a complex concept. You can find out more about the Into Wisdom Group, my company, by going to intowisdomgroup.com. That's where we guide people in groups to the next best step towards growth and sustainability. Also want to make sure people still know my new book, The Pottery Panda, is available. It's a business fable about a raccoon who starts a business through a very specific strategic action process. You can find that at potterypanda.com. Now, we just finished a conversation with Ken Lubin. Ken is currently a managing director at ZRG Partners. And along with doing that, which is kind of an executive search service, he also runs some amazing blogs and podcasts about executive athletes and about the ultimate hiring blogs. And he really pushes people to explore what is possible rather than what is. So with that, I want to turn the tables and allow Ken to ask me 3 questions. He's taken over the podcast for the next few minutes. So, Ken, I can't promise answers, but I can promise responses.
No, and I think, one of the questions that you asked me in the podcast, and this is sort of fun to do, is taking that next step, right? The transformative journey and going from being a successful business person to doing what you're doing. What did you find during that journey that has, sort of manifested and created what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think my biggest part in transition, because the assumption is that I'm there and I'm not. It's a constant and continuing process. And one phrase that really strikes me, if you're into the 12-step programs or recovery, it's day by day. It's one day at a time. But the cool part about that is you can twist it around to say new every morning. So yes, you take it one day at a time, but everything is new every morning. So you're thinking about possibilities and not limitations. And that to me is hopeful, because my journey, and I'm assuming most other people's, is not a straight line. It's up and it's down. So even at the high times, I need to think in terms of new every morning. There's always opportunity. And instead of in the very low places, instead of wake up in the morning and focusing on the lowness or the challenges or the obstacles, it's today's a new day. It's new every morning. I have opportunities and options. So that to me is probably the most fundamental thoughts I have about transition, is remembering that every day is new and every day presents its own unique opportunities and challenges. And that's actually exciting.
Perfect. And, one of the things, we're talking about too is sort of, I've got actually another friend of mine has a podcast, failing towards success, right? And I'm sure you've talked to a number of people, obviously, in your business life, what you've done, your guests, but, what are your thoughts on failure leading to success, right? And I think it's a piece that, again, people overcome well, they don't overcome well, their definition of failure, their definition of success, and they could all be one, right? It could all be the same thing. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I come from, like, when I was in college student affairs and college campuses, man, they avoid the word failure and weakness like you can't believe. And for me, it's like, yes, you can redefine those things, but they still exist. So to me, embracing the words failure and weakness is a first step towards overcoming them. And finding out that, failure isn't final. As I think Winston Churchill said it, failure isn't final. And that's the idea. I think you mentioned this up, is that failure, the only failure is stopping and just giving up. So to me, embracing those things, failure is the first glimpse you have of where you need to grow. And I think it hurts. There's an ego challenge in there that, oh man, I couldn't complete that. I couldn't do that. but you set that aside and say, this is information. This is data. This is how I know where I need to focus my growth. Same sort of thing with weakness. There's the whole strength finder, and a lot of people focusing on strengths, and that's great. But as I always wrestled with that, because I did my strength finder stuff and I've used it. And I found it challenging as an athletic coach. And it was the guy the guy who invented the swimming coaching technique. I'm blanking on his name right now, but Total Immersion.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, no, not Tim Ferriss interviewed him.
Oh no, he interviewed the guy. Yeah. The Total Immersion
But
guy.
I was listening to that podcast with Tim Ferriss, and one of the things that made me realize, as my background is coaching football and wrestling, is that you game plan for your strengths, both as an individual and as a team. But you practice and do development based on, you watch the films, then you go back and say, these are opportunities. That's the fancy word of saying weaknesses. And you practice and develop based on what weaknesses you want to change or where you experience failure. That tells you where you can develop. So when people ask me, what should we focus on, our strengths or our weaknesses? And I say, game plan for your strengths, perform, do your best stuff whenever you can. And the thing in business is you only get maybe 5% of your time for practice and development. In sports, you get 90% of your time in practice and development. So it's a weird thing that you really need to focus on your strengths and your performance. But when you have a chance to breathe, take a look at where you can grow, take a look at where you fail, take a look at your weaknesses, and that's what you can work on. Which ones can you leverage to make you even stronger? So my take on failure is it's information. It's feedback that allows you to take your next best step towards where you want to grow.
And what about, and sort of last question, talk to me about, habits and mindset, right? And how that really contributes to either success or failure.
I think habits and mindsets are really different. Your mindset is a belief whether or not you can change and grow. If you're static, then you never think you can change. And if you have a growth mindset, it means that you realize the whole concept of not yet comes in. I can't do it now, but I can develop into it. And that's the mindset. To me, habits are the behaviors that go into the unconscious. And really, habits are the only way you can change. I worked with my mentor, a guy named Fred Harburg, around coaching, and he talks about, he's an amazing guy. He was a Air Force flight instructor at the academy. He flew Air Force 2, or basically the prep aircraft for like they would bring the car and all that kind of stuff, and they'd be the one to taxi the runway to make sure that Air Force 1 didn't hit a bomb. And he's done amazing things. And he talks about there's no difference in discipline. Discipline doesn't make the change. It's the habits that you create that move into the unconscious that will create the change. And there's a lot of stuff out there from military saying, hey, it's discipline, discipline, discipline. The problem is most of us don't have the opportunity to go through boot camp where the habits are created, where discipline grows from. Or they don't have the opportunity to be coached by a world-class coach who creates those habits that grow into world-class performance and the discipline that it takes. So to me, the precursor to discipline is habits. And it's the day by day. It's new every morning, so that your habits have nothing to do with a streak. It has to do with waking up and saying, I'm doing this, until it becomes unconscious. I love my son's soccer coach. He's taking something that he learned from one of his coaches. He says, what I want you to do every day, don't wear your cleats from your car. Put on your shoes or your sliders, come out, bring your bag, set your bag on the field, change into your cleats, practice, go back to your bag, put your shoes back in it or back on and your cleats back in the bag, and then you go. That's a habit that works for him. Doesn't seem like it's important, but that kind of discipline, that kind of habits creates the discipline of consistency. I think of the story that you hear from John Wooden's players about how he talks about changing socks. And the fact that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar still talks about how Wooden changed his life by telling him the habit of changing your socks and the specific way of doing it. So, man, you hit a hot button for me, which is when I'm coaching people, I'm about helping them get clear of where they want to go identifying there's habits, there's tasks, and there's projects. And when you can identify those things that you need to do to get to where you want to go, and habits are foundational because they're going to bring about all the other stuff. So I have some thoughts.
Perfect. No, awesome. So no, there's the 3 quick questions, and I think you nailed them. So no, it's great to chat, and yeah, let's keep things rolling.
Yeah, thank you so much for those great questions. Like I say, I learn as much about your from your answers as I do from your questions. So thank you for that. And to everybody out there, again, be sure to do all the stuff you need to do, like and comment, and share this with other people. Know that if you listen to Living Life Juicy or you watch Living Life Juicy, regardless of who's on, you're going to find out something that can impact your life. So thanks for being here, and until next time.